Hi, welcome to another episode of Women Empowering Women, as I've been shortening it lately because the title's a little too long. Actually, it's Be Heard, Women Empowering Women. But today we have this lovely woman from North Carolina named Emily Cox, and she is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and she's the founder of Larkspur Therapy Supporting. And they work primarily with children and teens and young adults, etc. And I was telling her before our shooting that I have two daughters in the counseling biz. So we have something in common there. So, Emily, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well this morning. How are you, Marie?
Good. How is the weather up there in North Carolina?
Not too bad. We haven't gotten our flakes of snow yet. It hasn't shut down the whole city, so I think we're probably thriving. The
That's
bears are still out enjoying their bear life.
yeah, yeah. You're more in the mountain area of North.
Yes.
Yeah, and my one daughter's in Wilmington, which is coastal. So let me ask you, how did you, what made you pick the career path that you picked?
Such an excellent question.
Well, I ask good
Fabulous.
questions.
Yeah. Let me pick the career path. Oh, so many things. I was also one of those people in college that I had like 8 to 12 majors, really hard to decide. I was not one of those children that came out and was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, I
Mhm.
was not sure what my path was, as many people in college aren't sure what their path is. Many people in young adulthood slash adulthood, we're not sure where we're going and how we're getting
Mhm.
there. So I definitely had that experience. And part of that experience was seeking therapy and seeking counseling. And I was very lucky to have a really amazing therapist who was helpful in not telling me what to do and not giving me a roadmap, but like guiding the process of what was going to work best for me. And through that experience, I was like, this whole therapy thing seems kind of cool. This like seems kind of neat. What's this all about? Stumbled into psychology and I was like, people, how they think, how they behave, how the brain works. This seems
Yeah,
kind of neat.
yeah,
So then from there, I was like, what's this whole therapy thing about? And
you
then
were
went to
hooked.
grad
Yeah,
school and
yeah.
yeah, then I never intended to work with children. I totally stumbled into that. I was like, kids are gross, they're sticky, I'm not down for them. They are selfish, they only care about themselves because, they're
Yeah,
children. So that was really the main like dividing path for me
yeah.
was my
Mhm.
first experience working with children. I was like, but this is fun.
Yeah,
This is
then
exciting.
it was fun. Yeah. Well, it's definitely a step up from daycare. That's that's who deals with the stickiest part.
Yes.
With kids. So, if someone, let's say a parent or
Mhm.
a young person, was thinking about therapy, what questions do you think they should ask the potential therapist before they pick someone?
Mhm. Great point. Because, like, a lot of times when we're getting to the point of seeking therapy, asking for help is really hard. It puts us in a really vulnerable position. A lot of
Mhm.
people are really uncomfortable with it because it's not within our comfort zone of, like, I'm struggling. Please help me. I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how to get out of here.
Yeah,
That's a really hard place to be. So sometimes when we're in that place, we're so overwhelmed with just surviving or like just getting through the next
yeah,
day, the next hour, the next minute that it's hard to think through of like, oh, what do I actually need in a therapist? Or what do I actually look like I'm looking for? We're just trying to find a life preserver sometimes and be like, I don't know what color it is, but I just want
yeah.
something to grab onto. So then some of the things of looking for a therapist are like, what methods are going to be best for me? We've never been to therapy. We don't know, right? So we're like,
Mhm.
what? You're speaking Greek to me. I don't know what all these CBT and DBT and ABT and ACT, like you're
Yeah,
speaking in letters. I don't know what any of this means. And I don't know
yeah.
how it's going to help me when I'm just trying to get to the next day. So some of the things that can be helpful are asking therapists. I tell people when I do consults, like you're interviewing me, like I'm checking in with you. I'm not
Exactly.
just this like gatekeeper guard being like, no, you are not allowed past the pearly gates of therapy. Like we're talking to each other. We're both people. A lot
Yeah,
of therapy is talking, so it's having that conversation. So
yeah.
as talking is the back and forth and like people being empowered to ask the questions. what is your theoretical approach? Basically, like, what kind of therapy do you do? Is
Mhm.
it something that's more directive and didactic and more structured, of going through thought records and asking questions and giving homework? Some people
Mhm.
really love that structure and find that
Yeah.
to be really helpful, of like, everything is unknown, everything is gray area, everything is vague. Please give me something to do. Please give me some
Yeah,
structure.
I'm gonna say this because
Yes.
it's bringing up my own therapy. I grew up in the 50s. Nobody did therapy. I was a teenager in the 60s. Nobody did therapy. If they did, they didn't talk about it. And
Mhm.
actually, anybody in my family that had any kind of counseling or mental direction from another person was mentally ill.
Mhm.
And it was made clear to us that they were. They didn't use that nice word. They just said they were crazy.
Mhm.
So it had stigma attached, of course. And unfortunately, there's a lot of mental illnesses that can be genetic,
Mhm.
you know, and you don't know that when you're a young person. And I struggled. What happened for me is I got into addiction because I self medicated with alcohol because that's what you did then. You drank. You drank, and that was it. Have a couple drinks, you'll feel better, right? And I was well into my 20s and went into counseling for marriage counseling,
Mhm.
which didn't work because they don't want marriage counseling, just I did. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
And so I got into it fairly late. I still drank, even though I had gone to counseling, and it actually took me getting sober before I was able to have any kind of counseling that I could absorb. Okay. Now that's a little of my story. So, what the challenges and issues that face the kids today, this generation today, towards therapy? Do you see anything like that?
Mm. Similar. So people bring up of like, in generational shifts or in generational differences, the stigma of mental illness and like seeking help for any struggles is huge. And it's like, well, back in these times or back at this thing, like, there was a big othering in society of like, these people were placed in institutions, these people were placed in different classrooms, out of sight, out of mind. We don't see them. If something is outside of the norm, we put them somewhere else. And now we see more of an inclusion and more of an acceptance and more of a visibility and like acceptance and culture. That still doesn't eradicate the stigma though, of it looks differently, but it still can be challenging to access support and to access needs. It still can be within family systems or societal systems or community
Yeah.
systems not supported or accepted for a variety of reasons, but there still can be multiple barriers that are present in seeking care and seeking help.
I think there's still stigma um, with your peers, even because there are family members that have, in my family, bipolar disorder. Um, I got yelled at the other day because this boy, this man, he's a young man now. On one of my
Mhm.
podcasters said he was autistic, but he was moderately autistic. So I am not. That was a misdiagnosis many years ago. I'm like, okay, I'll find a way to retract that. No, but um, they don't really. It's not the first thing they're going to tell somebody when you meet them, of course, But I think it's still like something that's kind of hidden as far as if they can hide it. They don't talk openly about it. Am I correct about that? It's,
In my experience, yes. And that like it goes back to the being in a vulnerable position and being asking for help. Some people really connect as their identity of like, I'm autistic, I'm neurodivergent, I have bipolar disorder, I experience the world this way. And that's really
yes.
meaningful for them. That's a shift that a lot of people see that they're like, oh, that was not what my experience was, or that's not what happened in my family, or what. So the language is always shifting, the
Mm-hmm.
lines are always moving, which is a
Mm-hmm.
positive thing, but it takes time to adjust to and takes time to shift to. The place of asking for helps remains the same. The place of being vulnerable. So no matter what it looks like, and you brought up a great point about like peer input. especially with teens and kids, like peer support and peer modeling is so important. And so sometimes it's not, there's school-based therapy where there's therapists in the school buildings and they'll pull
Mhm,
kids out of class for sessions. Sometimes
mhm.
kids really respond well to that and they love that and they're like, it's my Miss Emily time. Sometimes it's like, where are you going? What are you doing? What do
Yeah.
you do with her? What do you talk about with her? And even if it's, kids are great and they're supportive and they're giving positive feedback, that's great that you do that. The like singling out and othering can still have an impact and still connect to this whole like, ooh, is this something I really want to do? And then also like, ooh, I'm doing stuff in therapy, but like, oh, there's all these other like input and opinions about this.
Yeah.
This is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I just heard about this woman, maybe her name right, Taylor Tomlinson.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know of her, but she is a woman that has bipolar disorder that is also a comedian.
Mhm.
Have you heard her yet? Have you seen her?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, she's so funny. And I think she's getting her own late night show. If I'm not mistaken. I think it's going to be one of these, late night with Taylor. But I think that's wonderful. You know, I would like to see that have an impact. Do you think something like that could? Someone actually coming out making jokes about it?
I think so. Like visibility is important, representation is important. I think it goes back to what we were talking about with the stigma of like previously it was kind of siloed away or put away. It's really important for people to like see themselves in others and see themselves in like people being successful or achieving things that they can connect to. Whether that's being on TV and having a late night show, whether that's having a successful Instagram, whether that's someone who's through hiking the Appalachian Trail, like
Yeah.
whatever someone's connects to, if they
Mhm,
can see that, that can be really validating and really important.
mhm.
So it's nice to see that like someone can have a diagnosis and still be a really happy, well-rounded, like
That's
thriving,
true.
successful human being. It doesn't have to be this like death sentence. We see this a lot of time in personality disorders of people with borderline personality disorder feeling like, oh, this is the worst one. What do you mean I have this horrible, like our diagnostic manuals are not written in the best like strength-based person-focused language.
Oh yeah.
So when you read
Oh
it,
boy.
it sounds horrible. And it's
Yeah.
like, what do you mean I'm like this horrible thing? But versus like lots of people with borderline personality disorders are CEOs, are in the C
Yeah.
suites of companies, are really successful entrepreneurs and business people. So seeing that like we are full, well-rounded people, we have multitudes inside of us, there are dichotomies that exist within our experience, I think is really important.
Give our listeners a handy, just generalized definition of what not bipolar, sorry, borderline personality disorder is. What is that exactly? What does that entail?
That is an excellent question. There's multitudes within it, but basically it's within the like cluster of personality disorders. So kind of separate from depression or mood disorders. There's a lot of kind of confusion and misdiagnosis between bipolar and borderline personality
Mm,
disorder. I won't like get into that. One of the main things that borderline can present as a like response to trauma. So sometimes it is, horrific things happening in childhood, horrible things happening that, put us in danger, attack who we are,
mm,
disconnect us from ourselves. As a
mm,
response to that, sometimes we have defense mechanisms that can meet criteria for borderline personality disorder. How it can be presented in media is really negative. So
mm,
sometimes the like crazy girl,
mhm.
psycho chick. It can be a lot of manipulative. All of these terms that like are not really lovely or like affirming or validating for people.
Yeah,
It also can just be like people trying to survive or a way to get through something that is so inconceivable and
yeah,
irrational and horrific that
yeah.
this is what the mind did to protect itself and get us through to the next day. And then people
Brings
can
up,
be very successful
yeah,
living with that.
yeah. So that brings up a thing for me too that do you think that gaslighting can be used as a defense mechanism by someone that has borderline personality disorder? If you get the gist of my question. You know what
Yeah.
gaslighting is because a year
Yeah.
ago people were not, they didn't know what that was.
Well, it's funny because
From a movie.
yeah, it's from a movie. And like in the literary world, I do some narrative therapy. So like metaphor is big. So like in the metaphor world, like people have been using gaslighter for whatever. And like that was an
Oh yeah, it's a
accepted
long
term.
time.
It's
Yeah.
interesting to me when like things catch fire on like TikTok or Instagram or social media, and it's like now everybody wants to, be a gaslighter, know what gaslighting is, or now everybody wants to do this or that.
Yeah.
Um, in some ways, it's can be a tricky question because like gaslighting can have an element of like intentionality with it and an element of like malice or harm and like control.
Yes.
So in some ways it is really present in abusive dynamics or like relational dynamics of like I
Mhm.
assert my control over you by changing your reality, by changing
Exactly.
this narrative. So connecting it
Yeah.
to a specific diagnosis can be kind of tricky and like kind of um unsure because like not because everyone has this diagnosis it's going to have dangerous behaviors or is out to hurt people or cause malice.
Yeah.
What can be present is like control can be really important. How do I control my dynamics? How do I
Mhm.
feel out of control of my relationships?
Yeah.
I don't want to be this way. I don't want to feel this way, but I feel like everyone is abandoning me all the time. Well, if
Yeah.
we're living in that, how we respond to it from the outside can be like, what is going on? What is happening? This person is
Yeah.
doing certain things. From the inside, it's like everyone is leaving me and I don't know why.
Yeah, that is interesting you say that because well, first of all, both my ex-husbands tried to gaslight me for years.
Mhm. Well, and like talking about gaslighting of the doing it and then being on the receiving end of it
Yeah,
can be very different
receiving
experiences,
end,
right?
yes. But what I said ex-husbands because of course eventually I got wised up and said, oh no.
Mhm.
And that's my book, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons. They
Mhm.
were the demons until I got sober. And then I found out that I had other demons, not just men that were in my life. And my diagnosis was chronic depression and anxiety disorder, which is why drinking felt like such, a good fix,
Mhm.
you know. But of course, we know that alcohol is actually depressant, so that's really not a good fix. And
But
that's
in the
actually
moment,
the
whatever
moment.
works.
Oh, I had many moments, honey. When we're done, I'll send you a copy of the book. Anyway, the gaslighting though, I think for many years, like certain people in your life that you love or you feel close to, and they do this, and it's like, why? I know they said that. Why are they saying they didn't say it? That
Mhm.
kind of thing. And what you said makes sense to me, that it's a way of control. The only way that you can control the situation is like to say it didn't happen, you know, didn't happen. I didn't say that. So, but still, when you're on the receiving end, it can be maddening.
Yeah. Well,
Actually,
and like having that empathy for it happening doesn't remove us from it not being a fun experience on the receiving end.
no, it's
Like
not
it
fun.
doesn't remove any like intentionality or like pain
Even
of
if you
like, okay, I
understand
can have
it,
empathy for this person, but also like it's not fun. It's
no,
not
it's
great.
not.
It
It's
also can
not.
be really present in like narcissistic tendencies or like narcissistic dynamics, which is a different thing. Like they're still asserting control, but it's like I am the ruler of reality at all times.
It's
So then
not.
it's like, whoa, how can I fit in as a human also in this
I know,
dynamic
right?
slash family slash relationship?
I know.
So we can like have a cognitive understanding or an empathy for it and still be like, but this sucks.
Yeah. There was a meme the other day. I saw it and it said, of course I save all my text messages in case somebody says I said something in 1862 that I know I didn't say.
Mhm.
And that is so true because there was a couple of times where someone did that to me and I'm going through the text messages because I know I have where they said the exact opposite. So it's kind of hard to be a gaslighter these days, right? Because we have these evidentiary things we can fall back on.
Mhm.
So for you, Emily, what do you think the most common issues are that like young adults face today that may differ from like say my generation,
Mhm.
the Stone Age?
Yeah. All the ages have value, right? Um, oh, that is such a good question. I mean, the go-to is always like technology and social media. When we think about like how things have shifted and how things have changed, I
Mhm.
shy away from like fully demonizing it because like it's a tool. So like it doesn't have any morality attached to it of like evil social media or like the savior social media. Like it's present, it's how we engage with it and how it engages with our lives. How it can show up differently, especially with like teens and young adults, is more of like it's harder to take a break. It can be harder to like connect with ourselves.
Yeah,
The algorithms are designed to like have dopamine and keep us connected to a like device or like a false like reality where it's
yeah,
like this is what everyone else is doing and you are not meeting up because you're not doing these things
yeah.
when like that's not real. That's what the algorithm is serving us. And the algorithm
Um,
doesn't think in the same way that humans do. I mean, a technologist might tell me I'm totally wrong with that, but according to a therapist, that's what I think.
oh,
So with that, the technology is so different, and especially with teens, like it's present all the time with like Snapchat and Instagram and
yeah,
TikTok and all of the things. I'm sure there's many that I'm not even mentioning of like it feels ever present. So
yeah,
whereas like we're being overwhelmed with input at class or in college or at our work, but like we can drive home and check out, or we
yeah,
can get home and like play with our cat or do something chill. Now it's like always on us because we always have our phones or a device with us.
yeah.
So
It's
it can
hard to
feel ever
turn
present
down.
and then
Yeah,
hard to like disconnect with it and then connect with our like intuition and our authentic selves because there's all of these like shadow selves out in the
oh,
world,
I love
right?
that you
Of
brought
like
up shadow selves.
well, like who is this and what is this and who I could be this and I could be doing that. So I think that ever presentness is a big difference, but there's also similarities of like peer stuff. And then with young adults, like it's such a transitional time, which when you're in it, it's kind of miserable and like not
Mhm.
fun, not knowing who you are or where you're going or what you're doing. Like sometimes being a woman in the 20s, like it's the trenches. It's the
Mm.
trenches of like just getting through
Yeah.
your mid to late 20s because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so many different things happening. So I think that is similar throughout like any time period or generational changes, but it's like trying to figure out like who am I? What do I want? How do I get what I want? Even if I'm the most
Yeah,
driven,
yeah,
structured
I
person, how do I
agree.
get
And
there?
the other thing that was going through my mind too is we had bullying when I was a child and a teenager, but we could go home and shut the door and
Right.
yeah, and get away from the bullying. And that is a big difference because fear of missing out. You don't want to not be on the social media, but you don't want to miss what's going on. But if there's bullying towards you going on, you're opening yourself up to that hurt. It's almost like a compulsion, like you can't help yourself. It's like, okay, what did they say now? And the more
Right.
you engage with that, right, it's
Well,
just,
and our brains are trained to respond to it. It's like you mentioned with the like having evidence for everything of like now
yes.
everyone has the screenshot. So like we all make mistakes. The us 14 to 17-year-olds, we make multitudes of mistakes
Oh,
that we're supposed to do developmentally in that stage. But
yeah,
now like everyone we're on front stage and everyone can take a screenshot of our mistakes and then hold it against us.
I
That's
know.
really different than other experiences or other things that have happened.
Yeah. So how do you build trust and rapport with your young clients in your therapy practice?
Oh, I love doing that. It's one of my favorite stages because I love too when I talk to people and it's like they've never had therapy before or like this is their first time. And I'm like, ooh, I love newbies. I love fresh meat. Because I
You
love
say
kind of
that.
introducing them. Yeah. I love introducing them to the process and kind of like demystifying it. Because like
Yeah.
how it's presented in media or how it's presented in social media can be very like staid and boring or like only the broken people or the bad people go here. And it's like there can be many benefits to therapy.
Oh,
So part
you
of building
know,
rapport.
I was told the healthiest people are the ones that are in counseling. They're the healthiest people, the ones that's like, "Hey, I have therapy, I gotta go."
Yeah.
They're healthy. It's the ones that aren't in therapy that should be, right?
Yeah.
So
That you watch out for.
yeah. So anyway, with back to our strategies and everything,
Mhm.
um, I have one grandson that he does practice mindfulness and meditation, which
Mhm.
is amazing. I mean, I think more young people are getting into it right now, but he was doing it even as a teenager or before. And that's because his mother is a counselor and
Yep.
she is into all that and she introduced him to it and he finds it very helpful. So, what are some other strategies that your young clients can use to deal with this fast paced world they're
Hmm. Well, I think mindfulness is a huge one. I just talked about how like social media is also present. It also can be an amazing tool. Like Cosmic Kids Yoga is incredible for like elementary age kids. Instead of some kids really love a yoga class, but it's like yoga and kind of shorter bursts and like connected to songs. They have Fortnite yoga, they have video game yoga, they have Frozen yoga. So
in.
like it makes it appropriate for them on their age level and like also fun. So you get the benefits of like the breath and the body work and the moving and the connecting to ourselves and the mindfulness of it without like dragging your kid to a kids yoga class or like sitting in the stinky yoga studio for however long. Like making it fun and exciting and engaging can be really wonderful. So I think anything with the talking about like things are big and out of our control and ever present, it's like
Mhm.
then getting back to ourselves and getting back to that like internal locus of control and connecting to like what is helpful for me? What can I do for me? What are my tools? And
Yeah,
those tools can be anything.
I'm still working on it, and I'm 75 years old. I mean, like this is your opening. You're supposed to say you don't look that old. Anyway,
You don't look that age.
thank you. Anyway, it runs in the family. We have very young looking people in our family. But anyway, I bring that up because um, I'm doing a podcast. It started with writing, started with 2020. Writing became a second career that I didn't see coming, my 70s.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, last year, it was like I'm losing my voice. This voice, the physical voice. My spiritual voice was getting out there, but I was losing my voice. So I'm actually going to voice therapy. And a lot of the things she has me doing are mindful type things. And just doing some exercise with your head, just moving your head around and shrugging your shoulders. And she's de stressing my body, is what she's
Mhm.
doing. And you wouldn't think that would affect your vocal cords, but it does. It does. So I'm still learning all this stuff. It's like, thank, thank God I was born with an open mind, because I don't care. If there's something new, I want to know about it. So, what are
Yeah.
your
Well, and I tell
some of your
people all the time, like, it's never done. We never hit like a, and you're healed and you're fixed. It's
no,
like learning. It's a
no,
lifelong process. So I hear a lot of like, oh, well, I'm still in this. Like, why aren't
yeah,
I better? Why? And it's like, we
yeah,
still keep going. The fact that we show up is important.
yeah. I have over 30 years in recovery in AA. That doesn't mean I'm cured.
Mhm.
People think, oh, well, you're not going to drink. You never know. There's some stressful situations where you could just say F it. and,
Right. We don't know what life is going to throw at
no,
us.
you don't. So before we run out of time, we talked about technology and how we can get around some of those things and how there's some good things. So, is there any specific approach or technique that you think works the best or resonates the best with teenagers?
Mhm. Such a fabulous question. Well, and I have to add a modifier to this one of like,
Okay.
therapy is like my vision of therapy is very like person centered and person focused. So it can be like tooled and guided to like what's going to work for each individual one. So if I came out and was like, cognitive behavioral therapy is the end all be all, someone's going to go to therapy and like, this is miserable. What was that lady saying? What is she talking about? Um, so like there's different approaches out there. I tell people like sometimes it's like trying on a new outfit or trying to find a new dress. Like it takes a couple to get the right one. When you get the right one, you know it. You're like, ooh, right. Like this is what
Right.
I've been looking for.
Yeah.
So, and in general though, with teens of like a general strategy that a lot of child therapists use is like roll with resistance.
Hmm.
It's a hard time. There's a lot of things happening. Authority is not like a loved experience when we're in our teen years. Some of us, it's never a loved experience, and that's okay.
Oh,
So instead of like asserting and being like, you will sit here, you will do this activity with me, it's like, okay,
no.
we're not feeling this today. like, I am picking up that this is not our jam.
No,
Cool, let's talk
and
about
I
it. We are
really,
not
I'm
into
kind
talking
of,
today, and that's okay.
yeah, I'm kind of old school in that I think talk therapy is really good. And the reason I say that is when you look at programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, that's really talk therapy.
Right.
You sit in a circle, it's group talk therapy.
Well, it's like basically like group, the benefit of having other people there and like the ritual of continuing to show and process. So like
Share.
a lot of the elements of AA are like the elements that make group therapy work.
Absolutely. And so you have that, and then they tell you to get a sponsor, which is another person to talk to tell the
Right.
stuff that you don't want to tell the group, right?
Hmm.
And I have been in inpatient treatment for addiction,
Hmm.
so I know all the therapies.
Yeah.
And there were a couple I didn't like, and I just did not do them.
Hmm.
But I think talk therapy is a basic tenet of um, psychology that's gone back a long time. And when you get into medication, now that's a whole different story because that's tricky. Now, you don't prescribe medication, right?
No, I'm not a
No, you're,
prescriber.
you're not required or allowed to do that.
Nope.
But you have some of your clients do take medication.
Mhm.
Yeah. See, that's it too. Are they taking the right medication? Do they have the right diagnosis that they should be taking that medication? It's like,
And then even if they are like, is the medication working for you?
is
Like
it,
I talk a lot, like sometimes it can be like a opposition of like talk therapy and
Mhm.
medication. I'm like, how do we hold hands and
I
how do we
know,
connect?
I
So it's
know.
like we could have an amazing psychiatrist, we can have the right diagnosis, we can have the right things. Our medication could have been working for 10 years, but all of a sudden we're like, I'm feeling swamped by my anxiety. So it's like sometimes it doesn't work. Life throws things at us,
Yeah,
things
I
change.
hadn't I hadn't been in therapy for years, maybe
Mhm.
20. And 2020, with everything and my husband's illness getting worse,
Mhm.
um, I got depressed. And when I finally got a psychiatrist to talk to, she said, "Are you taking the antidepressant?" I said, "Yes." "What are you taking?" "Zoloft." "How many milligrams?" I told her. She said, "How long have you been taking that dose?" I said, 30 years. She said, "It doesn't work anymore. Your body's immune to
Like, how
that."
are you supposed to know, Marie?
How was I supposed to know?
Right.
So
The pills come,
I
we
had
take
to
the pills.
laugh because it's like, okay, here's your diagnosis, here's the medication, and you go to therapy, and that's it. End of story. No, not really.
Mhm.
Your body changes, your mind changes, your circumstances change. So for your young adult clients, not to scare them or anything, but life is life. And what you're going through now, you have someone like you to help them with. And then they might have years, decades of wonderful, no problems. But when you feel like you have a problem, yeah, maybe you should go back in. I
Right.
did. I went back in. I'm still in counseling right now, and I love it. I wish I could talk to you every day. Well, this has been lovely. We're going to run out of time. You're so knowledgeable. Speech therapy. She also told me to talk slower.
Mhm.
Um, but you're very knowledgeable and very lovely and charming. And I hope this is the best part of your day today that we had this lovely talk. And I'd like to have you back again. Maybe
I would
get
love to.
into more depth, like
Yeah.
focus on one certain thing. That
Mhm.
would be great. So now you have a website. The website is Larks, Larkspur Therapy
Larkspur therapy. LARKSPUR therapy, just like the flower.
or the bird lark.
That is true. The
It's
flower is
therapy.
named after the bird.
It's
It's the
therapy
foot of
for
the bird.
larks. No, I'm making a joke. It's therapy for larks. Larks
Yeah.
therapy.
Birds like to talk too.
I will have that the podcast in the notes where to find you. Okay, and have a lovely day and be open. And we'll see each other soon.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so
Emily.
much.